Hello and welcome to another edition of Forever Young, the program that celebrates life in those post or the senior years, should we say? Hi, I'm your host, David Linton, and again, we welcome you to this show. It's a production of Hope Television, produced by Benton Aladdin, and of course, our executive producer, Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. You can share this program on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're also available on Roku and Apple TV. So we're glad to have you here today. We've got a really exciting program today. We're going to talk about something that's really dear to the American life, that's volunteerism. Now, when we think about volunteerism, that's always associated with seniors or people past 65, people retire, and then what they want to do, they volunteer their time. But do you know that 63 million people volunteer? That's 25% of the American population. If you had to put a dollar figure on it, volunteerism would equal to about $24.14 an hour. And everybody's talking about trying to get up to $15 an hour. Volunteers give their time. So if you put a dollar figure on it, they create over $193 billion a year goes into volunteering. So volunteering is not something that we look at lightly. It's a very important part. And of course, we're all down dealing with the COVID pandemic. And so right now, a lot of people are volunteering their times in a lot of different ways. So we've got some exciting guests here today that's going to talk about volunteering, how they volunteer their time. They've retired or in semi-retirement or whatever. Because as we spoke last week, creativity is always doing something, regardless of what the clock says or the calendar says. So, of course, I want to welcome my charming co-host, Miss Jean Hendricks. Welcome to the show, Jean.
Thank you, David. As always, I'm excited to serve as your co-host on this particular Forever Young program. I'm always delighted to be here with you. And this particular topic is amazing because as we get younger, in our younger years, as I always say, we can always find something to do to help someone else, whether it's in the community, in the church, or wherever you serve. It is always a joy and delight to be of service to someone else through volunteering. Volunteering gives you a sense of value and a sense of self-worth. And I think that's great. We need to feel good about ourselves as we do various things in our lives, especially as we get younger. Back to you, David.
Capsulize that by saying younger, because you're as young as you feel. As we said, age ain't nothing but a number. And so I know that we have, you always have a little nugget for us. Do you have something for us special this week that kind of set the tone for the program? You've already said.
Yes, I do. And I'm excited to share this one with you and the rest of the ones that's listening. It is entitled Volunteer I Am. 24 hours in every day. Where can I go to give some away? For my time is a gift. My experience is gold. All I desire is a small hand to hold, a tear to wipe, a child to soothe, a lonely patriot to confront when blue, a hurried worker to lend a hand to. There is no need for you to strike up the band, for I rarely seek out the fanfare of man. I simply have time to give away, to help those in need and brighten their day. For my time is my own. I give it for free. A volunteer I am. A volunteer I'll be. And forever young.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, and see, there's something you said. We said free, but then I just said in that stack, in that statistic, if you really wanted to put a price tag on it, that'd be $24.14 an hour. Well, we have two people that I'm excited about them being here today. I know them both, them in action. Our first guest, Miss Phyllis Bullock. She is a world traveler, but she's volunteering. You always see her around the House of Hope volunteering, and I'm sure there's some other things that places she may give her time. So first of all, I want to welcome Miss Phyllis Bullock to the show tonight.
Hello, everybody. It's a nice pleasure to be here with you. I love to be the very special person that you're talking about, a special volunteer. And that's for everybody. I've always been a volunteer. at the church as well as at my school. When my children were in school and coming on along, I went to all the PTAs, all the programs, and you name it. I went and tried to do my part as a parent for my children. Then when I joined the church, I learned from two groups of people at the church, and I always gravitate toward them anyway. And that's the seniors and the mothers and the children. Now, children are my favorite group of people to kind of look at and volunteer with sometimes, but sometimes not. But most of all, I love to do whatever I can do for everybody that I can do it for. That's one of those things that I learned was to be a good volunteer, to be courteous and helpful and hopeful for everybody. And I try to adapt and do those things to make everything good for everybody. I I'm just one of those people that I enjoy working for the church and working behind the scenes. You never have to call my name at all in terms of anything that I do, because I do it from the heart, and I want to make sure that it represents our church as a whole.
Well, we thank you so much. We do see you doing that, and I'm a testament to your volunteerism. I see you doing that. But we have another gentleman here who has also volunteers, and he volunteers a lot with an organization because, first of all, we got to thank him for his service to our country. He's retired from the U.S. Army, and he's here to be with us today. That's Richard Miles.
Hey, thank you for having me here. I just want to let you know I'm very honored that you take the time to just be able to talk about volunteering, because I think it's very important being a part of a group that volunteers. I just want to give you a little background about myself. Actually, I was born and raised here in Atlanta, in a Reynolds-town area. Went into the military in '77, did 20 years serving, had the opportunity to work with USO. And meanwhile, that was in Europe. So when I moved back to the United States in '91, retired at Fort Knox, I've had the opportunity in the state of Kentucky to work with Big Brothers Big Sister on the board of directors for them just as well. Spent some years working with Hospice of Central Kentucky on the executive board, and had the opportunity to put a campaign together for United Way of Central Kentucky. And that was all in volunteering. So I think it's very important. It is something that was instilled in me through a DNA, through my family. So we love to get out here and be a part of our community and do what we can do. But I was blessed after I finished there, moving back to Atlanta, to have the opportunity to do some volunteer work here. Start an organization here within the church called the Veterans Forces of Hope, to be able to help veterans and their family just as well. Having the opportunity to work with the VA under Dr. Cooper. And Dr. Cooper is actually the director of volunteer services at the VA, and he's a member of the House of Hope Atlanta, and working with Gateway just as well. This on Peachtree. And with Gateway, we have about 50 veterans that are kind of doing what we call a restart, resetting their lives. So it's a great program to help veterans that is sponsored through United Way. So thank you so much for having the opportunity to be on the show.
Well, thank you again. Like we said, volunteerism is such an important part. I mean, most of the time, life is made up in phases. You early year, you go to school, get your education, you may go to college or whatever, and then you do that. I like to call it that 30 to the 40 to 50 year run, or maybe even to 60. And then at 60, 65, you're supposed to retire. And then when you retire, they expect you just to go sent off the pasture, But we know that seniors are doing so much more, and like the 50 is a new 40, and 60 is a new 50. But the thing is, what motivates you? You can like people, and you can like that, but there's some days I just don't want to deal with people. I mean, hey, I don't want to be bothered with nobody. But with the volunteers, a very special. What is that one thing about volunteerism that really motivates you to get out and go do something for free, Phyllis?
The one thing is always the smile and the look of the people or the persons that I'm helping. It's a wonderful thing to know that I can do a very small and simple something, or say a very small and simple thank you to some people, or they ask for help, and I'm always going to help you one way or the other uh, at that time. But it's very important to me that, and I was raised to believe that I want to treat people the way I want to be treated. And if
Yes.
I want
Mhm.
a smile on my face, then I'm going to give you one on yours.
And that I know that you always do.
Yes.
Now, do you volunteer? I mean, I know you're beautiful. You know, you move around the world and all that. Where do you find time to volunteer, or do you?
Well, I do volunteer sometimes when the seasons are there. And I worked in the campaign for President Obama for 2 seasons, working, and I was actually really involved in that. And I've done a little bit of that here with my local communities as well, doing phone calls and mailing letters and that kind of stuff. I've also participated with voter registrations, and we were at the mall, and we were doing it at the mall or mall at Greenbrier. That's where I live, over that way. So we were always doing that, and I just love it. I just love to see and work with and enjoy people. And I'm always going to go to the older people first because I just love that group. I was, as a young girl, about 3 or 4 years old, I learned about the other mothers in the church because my mother didn't go to church, but she did make sure that my sister and I did. And it was across the street, so all she had to do was just get us across the street, and then that was it. And then, but it was very, very good for me. I used to, uh, and I still love it. I still travel with my grandchildren. I've been sending them and taking them on trips all of their lives. Now here they are, all grown now, but they want to go back to Disney World. Well, look, go on. You don't have to
Yay,
wait on
grandchildren.
me.
Now,
Yes.
Richard.
You don't have to wait
Now,
on me. Now, but that's what they want to do. So we were going to plan a trip here had the virus not taken over, to go to Disney World, Disneyland. Anyway, we were going to do that because that's where they wanted to go. And it's changed an awful lot, so I'm sure they would love it. Yeah, but
well, now,
we'll
Richard.
work on it
Now,
for next year.
okay. Now, Richard, I want to ask you because, like, you've already, you when you give your service as a serviceman, you give more than we could ever pay you. So even though you may have been compensated, a part of that was volunteerism. But now that you've retired and now that you said you go back to the VA, what is the feeling and what is it like to go back and see the either younger soldiers or even elder veterans? What is that feeling and what motivates you to go back? Because sometimes you might say, you know what, I'm done with that. What's that special thing about volunteerism, especially in that special group of people?
Right, exactly. Mhm.
What it is we've all grew up together, and what I mean by that is soldiers.
Hmm.
We all have served this country that we live in. We all wear that same uniform. It's green, and we always want to be able to be to a point that we could take those individuals and support one another. Because see, we never know what an individual is actually going through. And I think under volunteering is able to be there to lift them up because everybody goes through some trials and tribulations in their life. But if I can give you a helping hand, if I can just hold you up, if I can just smile, and we all have the opportunity to tell a couple of war stories, whether they be true or not. So those are things we love to do. So when you see that brother to your left or that sister to your right who have served in the military, if you can do anything, if you could just say, hey, what can I do to serve? We have an event that goes on every fourth Friday at the VA where we pass out over 200 meals to veterans, families, every fourth Friday of the month. And we actually have to do that this Friday coming up just as well. So whenever I can just get that opportunity to lift one up, give them a smile, we have different events for them just as well. So these men and women have been away from their families, gone for years, gone for miles in Desert Storm in Afghanistan, and to come back here to have someone to just give you a hug and just say, hey, thank you for your service, and be able to support them.
Very good.
Yeah, so Gene, did you have a question for you of our guests?
Well,
Gene,
no, I wanted to say just maybe three things that I've heard. I've heard the words commitment. I've heard the word desire, and I hear the word gift in what they're doing. See, everybody cannot be a type of volunteer as our guests are. I'm not that type of volunteer because I'm not as committed as our guests would be every day, every Sunday, doing something to help other people. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy helping people, okay? But my desire is more of a, well, I guess I have a desire to do it, but I don't do it as regularly as they do. And I am to commend them for their volunteerism. Everybody does not have a gift that way. And I think these two guests that we have today, guys, are giving them a gift to share and to help other people. I help other people also, but not every day. Not all the time, but when God has asked me to do it, I do it. Phyllis, every day of her life, she's volunteering every day. I guess she volunteers at night when she's dreaming. She's dreaming about volunteering. Okay, at night I'm dreaming about where I need to go in a few more weeks or in a few more years. Okay, back to you, David.
Yeah, well, you know what that is. You said something about something that really is there's people. There are people who are just made for that because, you know, my sister, who's younger than me, but she was a volunteer early on. I mean, she would always just be volunteering. And like Phyllis said, she likes to be with the children. So tell me, how is it volunteering with children? And is there certain age groups that you like to work with? You know, again, you know, just because they're walking, you can say if there's a special group you like a special group. But no, but seriously, is there, you know, special groups of children? Because sometimes different groups respond to seniors differently.
Well, my favorite group is the younger groups. At church, they're up to the 5th grade, 3 years old to 5th grade, and that's my group that I really like. And I want to get to know the children and the parent. Because if I see the children out somewhere by themselves, then I need to know who their parent is just in case. But that's my favorite group. Then the middle schoolers and the teenagers, I've done my share with them, but that's a totally different group. Yes, so that one's I had to kind of let that one go. But for the younger children,
you know what? It's really
do with them.
Good that you say that because you know when you get with the children earlier, because they even say now the first those are the most important years of a child's life. So the influences that they are around is really important and impactful. So you know you're picking the right group, and we're glad that you chose that group. You are too.
Yeah, that's my special group.
That's your special group.
I would come right quick. When we started talking about children and we started talking about volunteering, and I thought about when I was about 7, 8 years old. So I'm the youngest one in the family. Everybody else was grown, so I had to go wherever my mother went. So I would have to go with her to these little teas. You remember you go to the tea and you get that little peppermint. I don't know if y'all remember those. Yeah. It might have been before y'all time. And you get the little tea, and you would have to get the peppermint. You would have to pin it on. So my first volunteer service was to stand there and pass out these peppermints to the church. You know, you pass these little peppermints out, and then at that peppermint, then you pin it on them, and then they go in for the tea. I get it drop off $1. But you know, when you sit back and look at that, how your parents instill these little small things in you, and then as time goes on, you continue to volunteer. And it's awesome that we're talking about this because this is, I got a email, and this is Volunteer Appreciation Week just as well. So that's a blessing, and thank y'all for all that you do. Yeah.
Well, you know, thank you. Once again, if you're just tuning in, you're listening and you're viewing Hope TV. This is Forever Young. I'm your host, David Linton. It's a production of Hope TV, a House of Hope Atlanta. Our executive producer, Dr. E. Dewey Smith. And we know that you've been sheltered in place and you are bored looking at the walls. So we've created these series of programs to just brighten up your day and give you a different perspective on things. Now, you were talking about volunteerism. And, you know, when you volunteer, when you think about it, the church is really made up of volunteers. One of the things I do like about the House of Hope, every year we have a program where we actually acknowledge the volunteers, because at the end of the day, it's the volunteers who really move the place and keep it moving. And so I know that I work with the different ministries within the church, and it's volunteerism. Even the majority of the people who work on this production are volunteers. You know, the people who make the things, the engines that make it go, you know, the little people, like you say, you never see, you never know. So volunteers are always important. And of course, you can follow us at The Hope TV on Twitter or on Instagram. I always have to throw out the socials for you, so you know that we're all over the place. So tell me, if you had, now I know you guys are doing your volunteers, but is there something that you haven't done yet that you like, you know what, if I had a special moment, I wanted to give some extra time to that? I'll talk with you, Richard. Is there something other than the VA? I know that's your heart, but is there something else you said, if I had 27 hours in a day, I give those extra 3 hours to what?
If I could go back, and let me say this, if I could go back, because I think one of the most important things that I had the opportunity to work with was Hospice of Central Kentucky. And if I can go back and give another 3 or 4 more hours, that is a blessing, because you have the opportunity to see people transition, but to be there to support their families. And with me, I was on the board of directors for Central Kentucky of Hospice. So I had the opportunity to meet a lot of individuals and to be there to support them when they're going through some real hard times in their lives. And then I think that if I could get 3 more hours in a day, I would love to do that again.
You know, it's you know that you actually you really hit me right here in the heart right there when you said that, because yesterday was the 11th anniversary or the 9th anniversary of my father's passing, and I remember the hospice people who were there with him, and their presence really made that whole process easier. There was just somebody there to encourage you and to just be there and do the things that you couldn't do, but you wanted to do because you were too feeble, too weak, or just too emotional. So I mean, that's something that's really commendable. Phyllis, I'm gonna ask you the same thing. You had time to think about it. He didn't.
Well, for me, when we get through this virus business and I get back to church so that I can do what I like to do, because most of the time is at church, then I'll be ready for that. But then on the other hand, I have some children and grandchildren that I need to make sure they're taken care of and doing the right things, because I've tried to instill in them volunteerism as well. So, but that is my favorite thing. Now, the other thing is I have to kind of get my heart right to get to go and do hospice work, because that is also one of my things because I had to take care of my mother and administer hospice care for her. So I'm looking forward to trying to do that. Sometimes I get to be too much involved, so I need to make sure that I'm going to get involved in the right way, not so much in the wrong way. So I'm hoping to be able to do that before I leave.
Yeah, because you can get emotionally. That's an emotional thing,
That's
you know.
right.
And
You can.
It does. So it can pull strings. And so it's like I said, it's a very special person that would do that. Eugene, do you volunteer? I know that you volunteer at church. Is there something that you do or something you want to ask our guests?
Well, my volunteering, I do volunteer with some seniors within our church, some individual seniors that I go and take food to and take them to the doctor and this type of thing. I do. And I was going to mention this earlier. I have also just designed myself to be a volunteer to clean up my neighborhood. I walk in the mornings, and there are 2 days out of the week, I will have a bag and my little stick, and I'm picking up trash. To me, that's also a form of volunteering, keeping your community clean, something that is safe, and you want your community to look better. We have the area that I live in now, a lot of people go by and they throw trash here and trash there. So I'm constantly picking up trash as I do my early morning walking. And the only other thing I was going to say, if I had a chance if I had 3 more hours in the day, I think I would use my volunteer time in helping young girls, teenage girls, to live the kind of life that Christ is calling for in times like this. I would like to be a counselor for them, a person that they can come to and just talk. I just see myself sitting down with maybe about 4 or 5 girls, once a week, and just talking about life and what life has for them. If they are the kinds of young ladies who are obedient to God's word, that's what I'd like to do with my volunteer time if I had 3 more hours in the day. Back to you, David.
It's commendable because, again, like I said at the top, 63 million people, which is 25% of the American population, actually volunteers. And so we have to do that. And so it's a part of the DNA of our country. It's a DNA of that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be our brother's keepers. And doing so, you're helping. And it's not always something that you're not compensated, that $24.14 that they did volunteerism, try to put that somewhere. But we're running into the last minute of the program. I'm a capitalist, but you still should stay inside. I don't think, hey, don't go get your hair cut tomorrow. But if you had to say, what is the most important lesson you may have learned from volunteering? What has volunteering taught you, Richard?
I think it taught me to have more of a compassion for people. It taught me more love because you learned it, but then to be able to work in it as I continued to grow doing it, it taught me how to love more, be more compassionate, and understand more. And a lot of times it teaches even how to listen just as well. But one thing that it always sticks to my mind, whenever I do it, I do it as I'm doing it unto the Lord, because that's the big difference. It's whatever I do, I'm doing it unto the Lord. And I always think about a song that says, is my living in vain? I don't ever want my living to be in vain. Whatever I do, I make sure that I do it unto the Lord, giving it 120% and making sure whatever it is that it's done at first class.
Again, that's what it's about. I mean, and obviously, anybody who knows you or sees you know that you're a man of distinction and you operate with the utmost respect and you carry it. So we wouldn't expect you to do it. We wouldn't expect any half stepping from you anyway. So that's really good. You've lost your lesson. Now I will ask you the same thing. What have you learned from volunteering? What's your lesson? Your takeaway?
My lesson or my takeaway is, like I said earlier, treat everybody the way you want to be treated. And during that process, you learn to love people, to be compassionate, to understand where they're coming from, all of those kinds of issues. So I'm much like Niles, and I think that's pretty much all for me that I can say about that at this point.
Let me just say this right quick. Volunteering is also renowned for skill development and is often intended to promote goodness or to improve human quality of life. Volunteering has positive benefits for the volunteer as well as for the person or community that is served. I thought that was very interesting. So that's my take on volunteering for this evening. We benefit both ways, the person that we're volunteering and then ourselves also.
Well, you're right. And I think I think it is a two-way street, because when you do volunteer, you give and you receive.
That's right.
Yes.
You may not receive, it may not be a material thing, but it's something that if it's just that good feeling, you make someone else feel good, you walk away feeling good because you've done something for someone. And that's an important thing. And so as we look at this program, Forever Young, it shows that in every stage of life, you can volunteer. We have a church that ministers to 6 or 5 generations. And from the youngest, they're volunteering in some capacity. So it's a beginning of something that we take lifelong. And I'd like to say that when you get your wisdom, which comes with age, and you're volunteering and giving it back, that's what it's all about. And so again, we want to thank Phyllis Bullock for being here today. Richard now for being here. For being here. And I'd like to thank you for being here for another edition of Forever Young. I'm your host, David Linton, for Hope TV. And I thank you for our executive producer, Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. Remember, age ain't nothing but a number because you're forever young. Thank you. See you next time.
Exactly.